Continuing our prospect big board with the top linebacker fits for the Buccaneers, that and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarko at @JYarko_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in this show. Continuing our breakdown of top prospects for the Buccaneers at positions of need that span all 7 rounds of the draft. For those that didn't catch the edge rushers or cornerbacks episodes, you can go back and check those out. Today, we are focusing on the linebackers, which is arguably the biggest position of need for the Bucs this week in the NFL draft. Lavonte David is back. They signed Anthony Walker to go along with Servassier Dennis, but they still need a lot of help there, and potentially they need to find their heir apparent to Lavonte David once he walks away from the NFL. A quick reminder of how this is going to work. I am not going to come on here and talk about just the top 10 or so linebackers in the class. I want to focus on guys that I would take in day 1, that the Bucs have a realistic chance of drafting, some guys on day 2, some guys on day 3. Of course, just because I do not mention a player does not mean I don't like him or think that he wouldn't be a good fit, but we only have so much time, and I want to bring you some of the players that I think do fit the best. We are going to start this one off with who I feel is the number 1 player in the draft for the Buccaneers, and a player that they should hope and pray falls to them at 19, and that is, of course, Alabama linebacker Jihaad Campbell. So Campbell finished as the 62nd ranked linebacker out of 810 in 2024 and is just 21 years old. He's not a big blitzer, but he's outstanding in run defense. He's solid and reliable in coverage, and this guy does not miss tackles. Here's the thing. You don't need to draft a linebacker that specializes in blitzing. We know that's what the Bucs missed last year because, of the fact that KJ Britt couldn't do it. Devin White was gone, but Lavonte was the one that was tasked with having to come in and generate pressure from the linebacker spot. That's the role, that blitzing linebacker was the role generally filled by Devin White before the Bucs moved on from him. This is a player that you want the Bucs to draft because he would be able to fill the Lavonte role for the next decade, but he can learn from Lavonte for at least a year before he has to take up the mantle while also being extremely productive in the meantime. Campbell was the best linebacker in college at coverage stops last season, and he finished with over 100 tackles. He had just 14 missed tackles over the last 3 years. So he is as sure as you're going to get in that area. A 9.88 RAS score, which ranked 41st out of 3,204 linebackers graded since 1987. He ran a 4.52 40, so he has that sideline-to-sideline speed that you want in your linebacker. But here's the other thing. He's the number 1 linebacker prospect in this draft, and he's only been an off-ball linebacker for 2 years. He's not going to over-pursue. He's not going to put himself in bad positions by being too aggressive. He's a patient and calculated player that you want to lead the middle of your defense. 5 passes defensed, 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, and a defensive touchdown, as well as 5.5 sacks over the last 3 years with Alabama. I'm not sure that he makes it to 19. I think he could wind up in Atlanta, Indianapolis, or Cincinnati, but Campbell is a special player that would be a perfect fit for this defense. The next player that I wasn't really sure what to make of. Okay, so I had a couple of people message me and ask me my thoughts on this guy after the edge rushers episode. And I'm sure a lot of you know where I'm going with this. But this is a guy that could go in the top 10, but he could also fall into the 20s. And that's because, a lot of people, myself included, are having a problem trying to figure out what he's going to be at the NFL level. And of course, I'm talking about Jaylen Walker out of Georgia. So Walker is a unique player because of the fact that he split his time between off-ball linebacker and edge rusher. But let me preface this by saying this is strictly my opinion. I think he's good at both, elite at neither. I have the same feeling about Travis Hunter. Maybe I'm completely wrong on both of these guys. Travis Hunter, I think, is a good corner. I think he's a good receiver. I don't think he's the best at either of those positions in this draft, but he's going to go higher than anybody else at both of those positions because he's such an electric athlete and he's a guy that played both sides of the ball. I think it's the same thing with Jaylen Walker. He's good at linebacker. He's good at edge rusher, but he's not the best prospect at either one of those positions. He finished as just the 217th ranked linebacker in 2024, which is a slight improvement over his 243rd finish in 2023. 12 and a half sacks, 3 passes defense to force fumble, 2 fumble recoveries in 3 years with Georgia. He finished last year with 56 tackles, 19 tackles for loss. That's outstanding. Love that stat. But I viewed Walker as more of an off-ball linebacker than an edge rusher in the NFL, and he has the explosiveness that you want in an off-ball linebacker, but not quite the type of explosiveness that you're looking for in an edge rusher. Like Campbell, he's only 21 years old, so he still has plenty of developing to do, both physically and mentally when it comes to the mental aspect of the game. It'll do him some good to shift his focus to just one position and master all that comes with that. But early on in his career, he's going to be a situational player at best until he gets the nuances of whatever position the defense is putting him in, until he gets the nuances of that position down. For the Bucs, that means that he's splitting time with Walker and Dennis as more of a blitzing linebacker. His run defense leaves a lot to be desired, and he's spotty at best in coverage. Plus, a missed tackle rate of 12.1% is not ideal for a guy that needs to be a leader in the middle of the defense. Look, Walker has shown enough flashes that I trust with coaching as well as Levante David in his ear. He can become a really good linebacker in the Buccaneers defense. My hesitation comes from his jack of all trades, master of none production with the Bulldogs. Now, this may be a moot point because Walker's being projected to go in the top 10 to Carolina. He's also been talked about as a target for the Falcons, which, of course, David Shealy and Aaron Freeman will tell you is not going to happen because the Falcons do not draft players from the University of Georgia. But he's also been linked to Indianapolis, Arizona, Chicago, New England, New Orleans, and Miami. That said, it seems like every mock draft that I look at has him joining Dave Canales in Carolina as the number 8 pick in the draft. If it's me, I'm probably passing on Walker at 19 in favor of a more pure edge rusher or maybe another defensive player at a different position. But Todd Bowles loves his hybrid players, and he might see the value in a raw talent with Walker's skills being a nice fit in the defense in order to create pressure out of different looks. I know there are a few people that have messaged me or texted me because they like Walker better than they do Campbell. But if I'm being honest, it isn't a close comparison between the two. And Jihaad Campbell is the better prospect by a mile when you look at them strictly as off-ball linebackers. Much like the cornerbacks, the strength of linebacker comes on day 2, and we're diving into that next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. It's a game changer for me with all the travel that we do for my son's hockey. We can plug a Fire TV Stick 4K into the TV so that he can unwind after his games, or so he and his teammates can run an NHL Chell tournament right from the comfort of their rooms. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. For your second listen, find the Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on Locked On NFL Draft. Go inside the Locked On War Room for all 32 picks and some bonus ones in this ultimate 7-episode series. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on Locked On NFL Draft's YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Day 2 is where the Bucs are probably going to focus on linebacker if Campbell or Walker are off the board, but there are a couple of day 3 guys that could come in and immediately start. I'll talk about them coming up shortly, but I want to start here with the second round guys that are picture perfect for the Bucs, and we kick things off with Carson Schwessinger from UCLA. Finished as the 79th ranked linebacker in 2024. He has a 9.86 RAS score, 6'2", 240, and ran a 4.7 40 at UCLA's pro day. Now, Schwessinger was one of the best off-ball linebackers in the country at rushing the passer, but he's also reliable in run defense and in coverage. Over 130 tackles in 2024 to go along with 9 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 3 pass breakups, and a forced fumble. And look, Schwessinger isn't the fastest, but he more than makes up for it with his vision, his anticipation, and his IQ, which you guys know I hammered on it with the edge rushers. I hammered on it with the cornerbacks. You have to be a smart football player to play for Todd Bowles in his defense. Schwessinger has a knack for reading plays quickly and reacting accordingly. And even being on the smaller side, he does not miss a lot of tackles, just a 7.6% missed tackle rate after missing a total of 15 tackles over his last 3 seasons. His fundamentals are sound. His technique is textbook. It's just a matter of overcoming that lack of size and speed, which he has been able to do so far. Another second round guy that I like a lot for the Bucs is South Carolina's Demetrius Knight Jr. Now, some people like him more than Schwessinger, some don't. To me, it's a coin flip. I can be perfectly fine with either one of these guys. To me, there's not a ton of difference between the two when it comes to size, especially after Schwessinger put on nearly 20 pounds ahead of the combine. Knight is 6'2", 245, but he finished as the 48th ranked linebacker in 2024. He was the 98th ranked linebacker in 2023, and he has a RAS score of 8.17. Now, he ran a 4.5 840, so he's a little bit faster than Schwessinger, and he has the pursuit speed that you want. However, he's the kind of player that gets faster the further he runs. So he doesn't have quite the same initial burst as some of these other linebackers do. Now, I'm going to tell you some of the knocks on Demetrius Knight because I think it's important to understand why a guy that had his level of production is being talked about as a day 2 guy. He is not as sure of a tackler as some of the other prospects that are going to be taken on day 2. 11% missed tackle rate with 11 missed tackles in 2024 and 12 in 2023. He is one of the best run defenders in this linebacker class. His coverage leaves something to be desired, but at this stage, and this is the other really important thing to remember, I'm not sure that he's going to improve a lot from what we've already seen. That plays into one of the other knocks on Demetrius Knight, and that's his age. Knight is 25 years old, and he played 6 years in college. He played 4 years with Georgia Tech, 1 with Charlotte, and then last year with South Carolina. He didn't become a productive player until he joined Charlotte in 2023, but at this point, he's pretty much a finished product. So what you see is what you are going to get. Of course, there can be minor improvements here and there, but you're not going to see him become leaps and bounds better in some of these areas where he struggles a little bit. Not only that, he would join the team already older than Logan Hall, Christian Izzy, Kalijah Cansey, and Tyke Smith. He's the same age as Servasi Dennis, Josh Hayes, Zion McCollum, Jose Ramirez, and Marquise Watts, and he's just 1 year younger than Antoine Winfield Jr. So this is a player that normally would have been part of the 2021 or 2022 draft class. So you're looking at the fact that he isn't going to be in the league as long as some of the other linebackers in this class that are relatively comparable to his skill set. Now, that doesn't mean that that's a reason to avoid him entirely, but you need to be aware that if you draft him, you're probably getting 5 or 6 seasons out of him before he starts his decline. He's already reached what normally would be the beginning of his prime playing years. So, and there's going to be a learning curve that plays into going from college to the NFL. So that time is going to eat into his available prime years. It's not all bad, though. His IQ is off the charts. He processes what he's seeing as fast as anyone in this draft. His lateral movement is fantastic. I'm not going to be angry or disappointed if the Bucs draft him. I just want to make you all aware of some of the problems that he may face at the NFL level. Borderline second and third round guy is someone that I've talked about on this show a lot, and it's Ole Miss linebacker Chris Paul Jr. He finishes the 18th ranked linebacker in 2024 with a RAS score of 6.13. He is undersized, 6'1", 235, but runs a 4.63 40 and was extremely productive at Ole Miss. Outstanding in run defense and in the pass rush, better in coverage than a lot of the day 2 guys are, but he still needs to improve there. A missed tackle rate of just 4.5%. He overcomes his lack of size with sound technique and the ability to put himself in the right position more often than not. He's outstanding at pre-snap reads and communicating with fellow defenders, which would be a big part of what he's asked to do in Tampa. He's honestly one of the best open field linebackers in this class, and that's something that I'm sure Bowles is keeping an eye on, considering the struggles that the Bucs have had in that department over the course of the last couple of years. If he's going to succeed in the NFL, he's going to have to bulk up a little bit, because if an offensive lineman gets their hands on him, he's going to get taken out of the play. I have seen it over and over again. He just doesn't have the strength to disengage once an offensive lineman or even some of these better blocking tight ends get their hands on him. 9.5 sacks, an interception, 2 fumble recoveries, and a forced fumble in his college career, and at least 70 tackles in each season. The next guy that I'm going to talk about is, we're getting into the range of borderline day 2 and day 3 guys. In fact, the next 2 players that I'm going to talk about are in that range, but we're going to start with Oregon's Jeffrey Basa. Now, Basa is one of my favorite linebackers in this class, and I've talked about him quite a bit ever since the combine. And, the Bucs could realistically snag him in the 4th round, but he has been projected to go as early as the mid-3rd. So don't be surprised if you hear his name on day 2, but I think the general consensus is that he's going to be available, or more than likely going to be available, at the start of day 3. So Basa finished as the 204th linebacker in 2024 and has a RAS score of 6.83. Again, little undersized, 6'1", 230, but ran that 4.63 40. He's pretty even in run defense and coverage. He's just not great at pass rush, but is a consistent producer. A converted safety, so he's still learning the proper technique and learning how to properly read and anticipate things at the linebacker position. 4.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, 3 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles, a defensive touchdown since making the switch. And he talked to us in Indianapolis about how much he'd love to join the Bucs and learn from Levante David. He is incredibly confident about his coverage ability. Because he's a converted safety, he doesn't feel like he ever faces a mismatch when he's asked to take on a running back or a tight end but that his goal ultimately is to reach the levels of guys like Luke Kuechly and Patrick Willis. Those are the players that he said he models his game after. Just 22 years old and only playing the position for a few years. There's still a lot that he needs to develop and learn, but this is a player that is going to put in the work to do exactly that. He's constantly working to get better because he knows that he's got the ability to be a good linebacker, but he has to get the work in order to reach his full potential. The other borderline day 2, day 3 player, plus some of my other favorite day 3 linebackers, that is next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart, the guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the Buccaneers forward as we look ahead to next season. This week's Armada and clear-cut Player of the Week is Donovan Ezuraku. Even with the addition of Hassan Reddick, landing an edge rusher like Ezuraku to add to the Bucs pass rush could take them to the next level. Ezuraku's ability to conquer all challengers in his pursuit of the quarterback is the kind of heavy-duty addition that the Bucs have been looking for to bolster their pass rush. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what I think Donovan Ezuraku could do in Tampa. It's clear that our Player of the Week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Wrapping things up here on a linebacker edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast, and I'm sure some of you can guess who the next guy is because of how many times I have taken him in mock drafts, but it's Clemson's Barrett Carter, about the same size as Basa, but a stark difference in their games. Carter is an absolute elite run defender at the linebacker position, but his pass coverage is abysmal. That's going to be a big issue for Bucs fans, given what they've seen in the recent past with Devin White and KJ Britt. He's decent as a pass rusher, but he makes his bread and butter in his ability to read and react in the run game, where he's one of the best linebackers in this class. Now, to be fair to Carter, he's not bad in zone coverage, compared to other linebackers. But if he is tasked with covering a running back or a tight end one-on-one in man coverage, things can go south real quick. Over 80 tackles last season, including 11 tackles for loss. In fact, he has double-digit tackles for loss in 3 straight seasons. 12 and a half sacks, 3 interceptions, 2 fumble recoveries over the last 3 years. That's production that you can build off of. Only 22 years old, so there's enough time to help him continue to develop his skills, make him a better football player. And what I like is that he is already elite in one area with flashes in others. So you know that he has it in him. It's just about developing the traits and making him a more consistent linebacker in those other areas. A RAS score of 7.46 with big knocks being his size, but ran a 4.63 40 with a 1.59 10-yard split. He has that initial quickness and burst to go along with sideline to sideline speed and a high IQ to read and react, which is what makes him such an effective defender against the run. The next player on my list might be one of my favorite linebacker prospects overall. And the fact that the Bucs could snag him on day 3 is absolutely wild to me because I think he's much better than where he's being projected. And it's Kobe King out of Penn State. King was the 38th ranked linebacker in 2024, which is down from being 31st in 2023. He's the only linebacker on this list that's basically better than Barrett Carter is in run defense. When I said Carter was elite, he still isn't in the same tier as Kobe King. I'm not sure what's higher than elite unless you just want to call it the Kobe tier, but King does struggle in coverage. He's not great at pass rush, but I've watched King play a lot over the last few seasons, and he is a guy that is always around the the football. Over 100 tackles last season, 9 tackles for loss, and a forced fumble. Finished with 2 fumble recoveries, 1 for a touchdown, as well as 4.5 sacks, 3 of those coming last season, and over 200 tackles in his last 3 seasons. An 8.02 RAS score with a 4.67 40 time and a 1.57 10-yard split. The guy has the anticipation and processing ability that you're looking for at inside linebacker. He's not great at blitzing. He's not great at man coverage, but he's outstanding in the open field. He is lightning quick when it comes to clogging up running lanes to minimize gains for opposing teams. And he takes really, really good angles at all 3 levels, whether it's coming downhill or chasing down a runner who is broken free. He does take really, really good angles that helps prevent big gains from becoming even bigger. I really like this kid a lot as a day 3 prospect, knowing that he can play on defense and special teams with the tools and traits to potentially become a starter. Next for me is Ohio State linebacker Cody Simon, who is picture perfect for a 3-4 defense. He's a little bit bigger than some of the other guys that we've talked about, still not as big as some of your typical inside linebackers across the NFL, but he finished as the 17th ranked linebacker in 2024 with a RAS score of 8.35. He ran a 4.6 40 with a 1.54 10-yard split, and Simon is right there with Carter and King in terms of his run defense, but he is better than King in pass rush. Still not great in coverage, but he's not going to crap the bed either. The missed tackle rate is a little bit concerning. It's 11.5%, but he had over 100 tackles last season for the national champs, as well as 7 sacks, 7 pass breakups, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. He finished with 25 tackles for loss and 10 sacks in his 4 years with the Buckeyes. He's just a little over aggressive at times. Some of the knocks here are his size and his smaller than average arms, but he needs to build up some strength in order to be more effective at getting off blocks. He's sound and he's disciplined in his abilities, which can lead to him being an impact player, outside of the fact that there are times where he becomes a little too aggressive, maybe gets a little too excited, and that has led to some problems. Like the other day 3 guys outside of Basa and Carter, if they slide that far, Simon is a rotational and special teams guy at first, but he has the traits that you're looking for to develop into a starter in the right situation. The last guy I'm going to talk about here also played in the national championship. I have talked about him on this show before, and I'm putting him last because of his hybrid ability rather than being a true inside linebacker in the NFL. However, in Todd Bowles' defense, that could be a huge advantage. And I'm talking about Notre Dame's Jack Kaiser. So Kaiser was the 45th ranked linebacker in 2024. He was the 3rd ranked linebacker in 2023, but he's not a straight up inside linebacker. At least I don't think he would be in Tampa. He would play a smaller role or a similar role as he did for Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. And that's a guy that lines up at linebacker, edge rusher, safety, even slot corner. 25 snaps as a slot corner last year, 85 snaps in the slot over the last 3 years. He also lined up as an outside corner, as a deep safety along the defensive line, and as an edge rusher throughout his career at Notre Dame. He is another elite run defender and can get after the quarterback. The other nice thing about Kaiser, he does not miss tackles. If he hones in on you, you're going down, period. Just a 4.6% missed tackle rate last year, and that was the worst missed tackle rate of his career at Notre Dame. So when 4.6 is high compared to your career average, you're pretty good. 7.68 RAS score. Kaiser ran a 4.68 40 with a 1.6 10-yard split. He had 6 sacks in his career, 17 tackles for loss, as well as 4 interceptions, 6 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, 7 pass breakups, 2 interception returns for a touchdown. He's well-disciplined. He's a captain. He's a leader. I just put him last because I don't see him developing into a guy that is a full-time starter as a linebacker in the NFL or with the Bucs. I love what he's able to do. I love the fact that Todd Bowles can use him all over the field to create confusion, create mismatches, create all kinds of chaos. And Kaiser has the ability to do anything that Bowles asks of him. He would be a special teams ace as a rookie, which is completely fine when you're talking about taking him in the 6th or 7th round. But I look at him as one of those chess pieces that Bowles loves and talks about all the time. That said, if Kaiser is the Bucs pick, you're looking at either Walker or Dennis being your starter for at least this season alongside Levante David. For that matter, it'll be that way with most anyone taken on day 3 unless Carter or Basa happen to fall to the Bucs pick in the 4th round, and that's fine. There's only 3 picks for the Bucs in the first 2 days, so they have to prioritize the right way. You know, you can't take a corner, a linebacker, an edge rusher, a receiver, and a safety all in the first 2 days, unless there's some pretty nice maneuvering by Jason Light to be able to pick up some extra day 2 or extra 2nd and 3rd round picks. You're only going to be able to address 3 positions in those first 2 days the way things stand right now. That is going to do it for this episode. Coming up tomorrow, I'm going to go through the safeties, and then Wednesday, I'm going to have my receivers and running backs together. It'll be a little bit of an abbreviated breakdown for these guys so that I can get through both positions. But spoiler alert, I'm not talking about any day 1 players at all between the 2 positions. And I probably am not going to talk about any day 2 running backs. It's going to be day 2 and day 3 receivers. It's going to be day 3 running backs for that show. Until then, please check out everything going on Twitter at LockedOnBucs, at JArco_Bucs. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube with those notifications turned on so you know when I go live after the first round and after the second day of the draft. So yeah, subscribe on YouTube with the notifications turned on, as well as wherever you get your podcast. And of course, you can become a Locked On Bucs insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. I want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.